In A Dance with Dragons, Jon has a dream of standing atop the wall holding a fiery sword and battling the army of the dead. Very Azor Ahai. Was it just a dream? Does this mean that he is Azor Ahai reborn? Or is something else going on? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings, The Witcher and other great fantasy books and TV shows. Welcome. Readers of A Song of Ice and Fire are often quick to look for evidence of one character or another being Azor Ahai reborn, the legendary character who will lead the fight against the forces of darkness, according to believers in prophecy, that is. And Jon Snow is undoubtedly one of the key candidates to be Azor Ahai reborn. I did a whole other video on the candidates to be Azor Ahai reborn, or the prince that was promised, if you're interested, but long story short, Jon is very much in the frame. As well as being born in the right line of kings, he has been absolutely central to trying to prepare the defences of the realm of men against the advance of the others. And now he is even dreaming of holding a burning sword and fighting against wights from atop the wall. So let's take a look at this dream and see what we can glean. It happens at the start of an entirely new chapter, by the way, so George R. R. Martin is resetting the context, so to speak. We're supposed to take this on its own merits, though it's probably worth noting that by this point in the story, the battles against the wildlings are largely over. He's now trying to organise rescue missions for them and the like. The very next chapter is when he gets killed. That night, he dreamt of wildlings howling from the woods, advancing to the moan of war horns and the roll of drums. Boom, doom. Boom, doom, boom, doom, came the sound, 1,000 hearts with a single beat. Some had spears and some had bows and some had axes. Others rode on chariots made of bones, drawn by teams of dogs as big as ponies. Giants lumbered amongst them, 40 feet tall, with mauls the size of oak trees. "Stand fast," Jon Snow called. "Throw them back." He stood atop the wall, alone. "Flame," he cried. "Feed them flame." But there was no one to pay heed. "They are all gone. They have abandoned me." Burning shafts hissed upwards, trailing tongues of fire. Scarecrow brothers tumbled down, black cloaks ablaze. So far, this dream actually isn't very Azor Ahai-like. Jon is standing atop the wall, defending it against an attack by the wildlings, not the others. He's done this before, and there are many reasons why this might be a traumatic memory. Ygritte probably among them. There's even a mention of heartbeats, as if to ram home the point that this is an army of the living he is dealing with. Using flame is exactly what they did in the battle beneath the wall, and Jon standing alone, abandoned by his Night's Watch brothers, is probably how he feels at the time of the dream. He has sent his only real friends at the wall, Sam, Gilly, and Maester Aemon, away, and other allies are either dead or questioning Jon's leadership. In fact, if the dream ended here, we would probably just mark it down as an anxiety dream. He is doing his job in the dream, protecting the wall, but there was no one there beside him. He was alone and exposed. The Scarecrow brothers, incidentally, are a ploy the Night's Watch had used before to make it look like Castle Black had more defenders than it actually had. Making scarecrows, covering them in black cloaks, a clever ploy, but here mostly just a reminder that he is alone, and even they are shot down. So this seems like a dream, the kind of thing you might dream after the kind of day Jon had had. The previous Jon chapter was about the previous day, so we know what was on his mind when he went to sleep. His day had been dominated by discussions about the wildlings coming south, of his Night's Watch promise to defend the realms of men, suspicions that allies might not be completely on his side after all. In a wonderful piece of psychological writing, George R. R. Martin also weaves in many of the throwaway comments and thoughts of the previous day into this dream. Bowen Marsh talks of standing atop the wall and fighting wildlings, and that's what Jon does in this dream. Bowen Marsh also mentions spiders freezing, and later in the dream, which we'll get onto in a moment, Jon sees people scuttling up ice like spiders. Jon thinks of the wall as looking like rivers of black ice, and in the dream he is dressed in black ice. He thinks about his family, and he dreams of Robb, he thinks of Melisandre, and he dreams of fire, and so on. In short, this dream is exactly the kind of dream you would have if your brain was trying to sort through the events of the very stressful day that Jon had just had. But the dream doesn't stop there. "Snow!" an eagle cried, as foemen scuttled up the ice like spiders. Jon was armoured in black ice, but his blade burned red in his fist. As the dead men reached the top of the wall, he sent them down to die again. He slew a greybeard and a beardless boy, a giant, a gaunt man with filed teeth, a girl with thick red hair, Too late he recognised Ygritte. She was gone as quick as she'd appeared. The eagle's cry of snow here heralds a sudden shift. The living wildling army now turns into an army of dead whites. He is wearing armour of black ice. This is the kind of language used to describe dragonglass, frozen fire, but is also reminiscent of the Valyrian steel armour Euron is wearing in the Forsaken pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter. Either way, dragonglass or Valyrian steel, this is armour specifically crafted for use against the whites and the others, and he is wielding a fiery sword. Lightbringer, the legendary sword of Azor Ahai. He even uses Lightbringer to kill Ygritte, his lover. The legend of Azor Ahai has Azor Ahai killing his lover with Lightbringer. And Jon is winning now. At the start of the dream, he was abandoned and alone, and the Scarecrow brothers were being shot down around him. We heard no mention of armour or a sword. But now, as soon as the dead men reach the top of the wall, Jon kills them. He is perfectly equipped to do so, after all. He seems unstoppable. This section of the dream isn't just a dream, Jon's brain making sense of things that had happened. It is an apparently deliberate and focused attempt to place Jon as Azor Ahai reborn. But then the dream shifts again. The world dissolved into a red mist. Jon stabbed and slashed and cut. He hacked down Donal Noy and gutted deaf Dick Follard. Corin Halfhand stumbled to his knees, trying in vain to staunch the flow of blood from his neck. "I am the Lord of Winterfell," Jon screamed. It was Robb before him now, his hair wet with melting snow. Longclaw took his head off. Jon killing his lover in the dream brings a red mist down. Jon seems to now be fighting real people again, not whites. He's fighting with Longclaw, not a fiery blade. The people he is killing are people he knows, not random wildlings or whites. He is angry, screaming. What happened? Breaking this down, it seems that Jon started having a normal dream, a completely understandable and not particularly noteworthy dream given his circumstances. Then something shifted, and he started dreaming he was Azor Ahai reborn, a change heralded by a bird calling his name Snow. Remember that. Again, we'll come back to it. Then, when being Azor Ahai reborn meant killing his lover, as Azor Ahai does, he gets angry at the thought. A red mist descends. He stabs and slashes and cuts. He screams. The people he kills now aren't random people he knew. They are people he loved or respected or felt some guilt about their deaths. Ygritte, of course, died as a direct result of him abandoning her to warn the Night's Watch of their attack. Donal Noy died, preventing Mag the Giant from breaking through the tunnel in the wall at Castle Black. He had left Jon in charge at the top of the wall in order to do it. Deaf Dick Follard died when warning Jon of some wildlings about to attack. Corin Halfhand was killed by Jon, saving Jon's life. And Robb? Well, if Jon had left the Night's Watch back in Book 1, perhaps he would have been able to save Robb, or at least try to. Jon clearly feels guilty for all of their deaths, shown in the dream as him killing them personally. But perhaps more intriguingly, Jon seems to be entertaining what we might call a kind of berserker rage in his dream. A red mist descending, slashing, cutting and stabbing with no thought of his opponent, screaming in battle. It may sound unlike the TV show Jon, but going berserk like this is actually something Jon does quite a few times in the books. Twice he tries to attack Alliser Thorne, for example, when the knight is cruel and mocking about his family and has to be dragged away by lots of people. We read that, in the blink of an eye, Jon had vaulted onto the table, dagger in his hand. Pip made a grab for him, but he wrenched his leg away. People were shouting, but Jon Snow did not hear them. He lunged at Sir Alliser, but Sam threw himself between them, and before Jon could get around him, Pip was on his back, clinging like a monkey, and Gren was grabbing his arm while Toad wrenched the knife from his fingers. Jon there is angry, so angry he can't hear people shouting near him, and it takes 4 people to hold him back. Another time he is sparring with a Night's Watchman called Emmett. He gets hit and then goes into a rage again. In the end, Haldor and Horse had to pull him away from Iron Emmett, 1 man on either arm. "Jon, enough!" Haldor was shouting. "He's down! You disarmed him! Enough!" No, not enough. Never enough. Jon didn't hate Emmett, he just went into a berserker rage when he got hit. Every time this happens to Jon, it seems to be connected with some pain from his family. Alliser Thorne mocking Ned, or, in the incident with Emmett, remembering Robb telling him he could never be Lord of Winterfell. Perhaps that last bit is the link we need across to Jon calling out that he is the Lord of Winterfell. Dreams and memories make odd connections sometimes. Anyway, the important point as far as this dream is concerned is that whatever this dream had been about, John being reminded of his guilt about Ygritte's death sends him spiralling, as that kind of thing often did. A red mist descends, and he starts flailing around in his dream at anyone near him. John is spiralling and needs to be pulled back out of the dream by a gnarled hand. Then a gnarled hand seized John roughly by the shoulder. He whirled and woke with a raven pecking at his chest. "Snow?" the bird cried. John swatted at it. The raven shrieked its displeasure and flapped up to a bedpost to glare down balefully at him through the pre-dawn gloom. A gnarled hand grips John in his dream, and Lord Mormont's raven pecks at him, awakening him. Whose hand? Well, gnarled is a word George R. R. Martin uses almost exclusively to describe old men and trees, particularly weirwood trees. So, an old man connected with weirwood trees? I'm sure you're ahead of me here, but that sounds very like Bloodraven. Added to which, there is lots of evidence that Bloodraven had been warging into Mormont's raven. I'll cover that in another video. So this sounds very much like Bloodraven pulling John out of the dream when he started going into a berserker rage. And it makes sense if Bloodraven had been involved in influencing the middle part of the dream at least, because it fits completely with what he had been trying to do all that time, preparing John to be leading the fight against the others. And I'm sure, not coincidentally, the thing which heralded the dream first shifting to an Azor Ahai dream was a bird calling out, "Snow," the very thing that another bird, the raven, said as John woke up. And as a final clue, we get the raven itself providing some commentary on what happens with a few choice words immediately afterwards, as it had a habit of doing. He rose and dressed in darkness as Mormont's raven muttered across the room. "Corn," the bird said, and "King," and "Snow, John Snow, John Snow." That was weird. The bird had never said his full name before, as best John could recall. So let's try to pull all of this together. The dream starts perfectly innocently. John had had a busy, stressful day filled with negotiations about what to do about the wildlings and difficult conversations with his Night's Watch brothers as they disagreed with his proposed way forward. The dream he started having that night is exactly what you might expect, picking up on details of the day and about the things he is most anxious about. The details are exaggerated, as you would expect from a dream. The giants are 40 foot high rather than around 14 in real life. Dogs are the size of ponies. It's not just people with bone armour, it's chariots made of bones, and so on. And in reality, John isn't entirely friendless at the wall, but it's the kind of exaggeration you do get in normal dreams. Then the mood shifts as the eagle cries, "Snow." This is where Bloodraven perhaps starts to influence what's going on. The enemies are not now wildlings, but dead enemies, wights. He is dressed in black ice, dragonglass or Valyrian steel, and is wielding a fiery sword, Lightbringer. He is a classic Azor Ahai figure, defending the realms of humanity. And what else does Azor Ahai do in the legends? Well, he kills his lover with that fiery sword, and John does that in the dream. Ygritte appears, and he kills her. Bloodraven is trying to make John start to think of himself as Azor Ahai reborn. But John understandably gets angry when he's made to kill his old lover, and when John gets angry, he goes into something of a berserker rage, even in dreams it would appear. He still felt huge guilt over Ygritte's death, so suddenly the dream descends into a whirl of him stabbing, slashing, killing those who had died who he felt some guilt about, as if he were personally responsible. Now, obviously, this wasn't what Bloodraven had wanted for this dream. He had wanted a positive dream where John is the saviour of humanity, fighting off the undead, not one where he's angrily hacking his way through guilt and painful memories. So Bloodraven brings him out of the dream, his gnarled hand on John's shoulder in his dream, and the raven he so often walks into, pecking at him in real life. Bloodraven had introduced John to the idea of taking on the mantle of Azor Ahai reborn, but had perhaps not counted on the extent of John's anger and guilt that he has kept locked up inside of him. John can't be manipulated that easily, it seems. In the end, Mormont's raven is left to shrieking displeasure and staring balefully over at John before muttering "King" and "Jon Snow." John may not be manipulated that easily, but Bloodraven also won't give up on him that easily. So this dream isn't, as some have claimed, evidence that John is Azor Ahai reborn, but it probably is yet more evidence that Bloodraven thinks that he is, and is now starting to push him towards believing that himself. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos, please click on the link on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support this channel, Thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.